Pour yourself a glass of tap water right now and hold it up to the light. It looks clean, it looks clear, but bring it close and breathe in. There it is. That faint, sharp smell, like a swimming pool. That is not water, that is chemistry. And you are about to drink it, and cook with it, and bathe your children in it, and pay for it every single month for the rest of your life. The average American household pays well over $70 a month for water and sewer. Some pay far more. Hundreds of dollars a year for water that arrives smelling of chemicals through pipes you do not own, from a system you are not allowed to question. And here is the part that should stop you cold. For most of human history, no one paid a dime for clean water. They drew it from the ground, sweet and cold and clean, and they kept it that way with nothing but knowledge. The Amish still do. Drive out to an old-order farm and ask for a glass of water, and what you will be handed is cold, clear, sweet water from their own well that has never seen a treatment plant, never carried that chemical smell, and never cost them a single dollar. And the way they keep that water clean comes down to a handful of simple, natural things they have quietly put in and around their wells for over a century, 11 of them to be exact. 11 things the city water company would very much prefer you never learned about. Stay with me, because I am going to walk you through all 11, the real science behind why they work, and near the end, the deepest one, the living secret that does more to clean water than any chemical the city pours into yours. Do not click away. The most important one comes last. My name is Levi Miller, and I did not read this anywhere. I drew the water with my own hands. Now, first, understand this. None of this is new. There is no patent on clean water. No company invented these methods. People kept their water clean and sweet for thousands of years on every continent, long before there was a treatment plant or a water bill. The Amish simply never stopped. While the rest of the country was hooked up to the municipal pipe and taught to forget, they kept the old knowledge alive, well by well, farm by farm, for 200 years. And that is exactly why you were never taught any of it. Because there is no money in water a man can keep clean himself. Let me take you to where I learned it. It was a gray, drizzling morning when I drove out to a farm near Bird in Hand, Pennsylvania. The kind of soft rain that beads on your jacket and makes the whole world smell of wet earth and wood smoke. I had come to meet a man named Gideon Fisher, 79 years old, whose family had drawn water from the same well for 4 generations. People in the area said that if you wanted to understand water, Gideon was the man to ask. He met me by the well house, a low stone structure with a wooden cover beaded with rain. He drew up a bucket, slow and steady, hand over hand, and he dipped a tin cup and handed it to me. I drank. And I have to tell you, it did not taste like water I knew. It was cold, it was clean, it was faintly sweet. There was no smell, no edge, no chemistry, just water, the way water is supposed to be. Gideon watched my face, and he smiled, and he said the thing I want you to remember, the thing he said to me 3 times that morning. He said, "Water does not need to be made clean, it needs to be left clean. We just stopped poisoning it and started protecting it." Left clean, not made clean. Hold on to that. Because by the end of this, you will understand that one sentence overturns nearly everything you have been told about water. Now let me explain the principle, because if you understand it, the 11 things will make perfect sense. Clean water in the ground is not an accident. The earth itself is the greatest water filter ever made. Rain falls, and it soaks down through layers of soil and sand and stone, and every layer strains it, cleans it, and cools it, until it gathers in the ground sweet and pure. A good well does not create clean water. It simply reaches down to water the earth has already cleaned, and then protects it from being fouled again. That is the whole game. Reach the clean water and keep it clean. Let me give you the numbers, because they are remarkable. Picture rain soaking into a hillside. By the time that water has traveled down through just a few feet of good soil and sand, studies of natural ground filtration show the vast majority of the particles and many of the harmful organisms are already strained away. Go down through enough clean earth, and the water that gathers below can be cleaner than anything that comes out of a treatment plant, and it arrives cold and sweet and without a single chemical added. Researchers who study groundwater will tell you that the Earth is the most effective, most patient water treatment system on the planet, and it has been running for free for as long as there has been rain and stone. Picture that. Beneath the feet of nearly every house in this country, the oldest filter in the world, working day and night, asking nothing, charging nothing. And the 11 things Gideon's family used all do one of two jobs. They either help the earth do its filtering even better, or they protect the water from the things that would foul it. Let me give them to you, one by one, exactly as Gideon walked me through them. The first is charcoal, clean, hard wood charcoal. Picture the black glittering chunks in a basket by the well. For thousands of years, charcoal has been used to pull impurities and odors out of water. It is the same principle behind the expensive filters sold today. The earth gives it for free from the fire. The second is clean sand, in layers. Picture pale, washed river sand, packed in careful beds. Water passing slowly through fine sand comes out remarkably clear because the sand strains out the fine particles the eye cannot even see. This is the heart of it, and I will come back to sand at the very end, because there is more to it than anyone realizes. The third is gravel, beneath the sand. Picture the rounded gray stones at the bottom. The gravel holds the sand in place and lets the clean water gather below. Coarse on the bottom, fine on the top. That is how the earth itself is built, and the old well builders copied it exactly. The fourth is copper, a simple piece of clean copper. Picture the warm reddish gleam of it down in the cool stone. Copper has been known for centuries to keep water from going green with algae and slime. Sailors and travelers carried copper for exactly this reason. A little copper keeps the water bright and discourages the green growth that fouls a stagnant well. The fifth is, and this one surprises everyone, a few small fish. Picture them dark shapes moving slow in the deep, cool water. In open wells and cisterns, a few hardy fish were kept for one reason. They eat the mosquito larvae and the insects that would otherwise breed in still water, a living, swimming, self-feeding guard against the pests that foul standing water. When the fish were healthy, Gideon said, you knew the water was good. They were the canary and the cleaner, both at once. The sixth is limestone, clean, crushed limestone. Picture the chalky white stone in the water. In areas where the water runs a little sharp or acidic, limestone gently softens and sweetens it, balancing it the way the earth does in limestone country, which is exactly why the sweetest spring water in the world so often comes from limestone ground. The seventh is watercress and certain clean water plants. Picture the bright green cress growing at the spring head, trembling in the cold flow. Living water plants draw up impurities and keep the water moving and alive. A spring choked with healthy green cress, Gideon told me, is almost always a spring of clean water. The plants and the water keep each other well. The eighth is oak bark, or the bark of certain hardwoods. Picture the rough brown bark steeping in a vessel of water. The natural tannins in oak bark have been used for centuries to clarify and preserve. A small amount helps settle and clear cloudy water, the same chemistry that has cured leather and preserved barrels for all of history. The ninth is silver, a clean silver coin or piece. Picture the cool white shine of it in the dark water. Like copper, silver has been used for thousands of years to keep water fresh and free of growth. The old pioneers dropped a silver coin in the milk and the water to keep it sweet, and they were not wrong. The science has a name for it now. They simply called it keeping the water clean. The 10th is a clean, tight cover. Picture the heavy wooden lid, the stone well house, sealing the water away from the open air. Gideon was firm that most fouled wells are fouled from above. Leaves, dust, animals, runoff, all the filth of the open world falling in. The simplest protection of all is a good cover, kept tight, kept clean. Half of keeping water clean is simply keeping the world out of it. And the 11th, Gideon saved, because it is the deepest of them all, and it is the living secret I am going to come back to at the very end. So hold that number, 11. We are not done with it. Now I have to introduce the villain, because someone made very sure you would forget every one of these. Through the 20th century, as towns and cities grew, the municipal water system spread across the country, and with it came a quiet message, repeated until it became invisible truth. Your own water is dangerous. Your well is dirty. Only the central system, with its chemicals and its treatment plant and its monthly bill, can be trusted. Now, it is true that crowded cities needed central systems, that is fair, but the message went further than that. It taught an entire nation of people, even those on good land with good water, that they were helpless to keep their own water clean. That clean water was something only an institution could provide, and only for a price. The knowledge that had kept families in sweet water for thousands of years was quietly erased, replaced by a pipe, a chemical smell, and a bill that never stops coming. But the Amish never bought the fear. They watched the pipe come down the road, and they kept their wells, and their charcoal, and their sand, and their cold, sweet water, and they let the whole thing pass them by. But that is only half the story, because knowing the 11 things is not the same as understanding the one principle that makes them all work, and that is the living secret Gideon saved for last. Now let me give you the concrete steps, because I promised you something you could actually use, not just marvel at. You may not have a well, but the principle of clean water is something you can build and prove with your own hands this weekend for very little. You can build what the old-timers called a slow filter, and it is the same thing that quietly cleaned the drinking water of entire cities before chemicals were ever invented. Here is how, in simple form. First, take a clean, food-safe container, tall rather than wide. Picture a clean barrel or large vessel. Second, build the layers from the bottom up exactly the way the earth is built. A bed of clean gravel at the bottom. Picture the gray stones settling in. Then a thick bed of clean, washed sand on top of the gravel. Picture the pale sand, deep and even, and a layer of clean, hard charcoal worked in. The water goes in the top, and it travels down slowly through the charcoal, through the sand, through the gravel, and comes out the bottom clarified and freshened. Third, and this is the part everyone rushes, you must go slow. The magic of a sand filter is in the slowness. Water that races through is barely touched. Water that moves through, drop by patient drop, comes out transformed. Picture the slow, steady drip at the bottom. Patience is the filter. Speed ruins it. Fourth, protect it. Keep it covered. Keep it clean. Keep the world out of it, exactly as Gideon kept his well covered. Picture the clean cloth or lid over the top. And fifth, and I cannot say this strongly enough, this clarifies and freshens water, but making water truly safe to drink is a serious matter that depends on your source and your situation. Always test your water, and always consult a qualified professional before you trust any source for drinking. I am sharing history and principle here, not handing you a guarantee. The old-timers knew their land and their water across generations. Respect water the way they did. Now let me pause for just a moment, because if you have made it this far, you are not like most people. Most people hear all this and shrug and go back to the chemical smell and the monthly bill because they have been taught they have no other choice. but you are still here. You are the kind of person who wants to understand where your water comes from, who is tired of paying for fear, who would rather protect what is clean than buy it back from someone else. There is a quiet movement of people exactly like you, relearning what every family used to know. If that is you, subscribe and stand with them. Not for me. For the simple idea that a family should be able to keep its own water clean and sweet without asking permission or paying rent to anyone. Now let me give you the 11th thing, the living secret, because everything so far is only half the story. Here is the secret within the secret. The 11th thing. After we had drawn water together for the better part of the morning, after the rain had softened to a mist, Gideon crouched down by the well, and he told me the thing his grandfather had told him was more important than all the rest combined. He said the top of the sand, the very top layer where the water first touches it, becomes alive, and that living layer is what truly cleans the water. I did not understand at first, he explained. When water passes slowly through clean sand, day after day, week after week, a thin living layer forms on the very top of the sand. A delicate film of tiny living things, harmless and natural, that actually feed on the impurities and the harmful organisms in the water. The sand strains out the particles, yes, but that living layer, that thin skin of life on top of the sand, eats the rest. It is a living filter, and the longer it is left undisturbed, the better it works. This is not folklore. This is real, and it has a name. The old-timers called it nothing at all. The engineers who later studied it called it the slow sand filter, and the living layer on top has a proper scientific name, and it has been documented to remove the vast majority of harmful organisms from water, well over 95 and often over 99%, with no chemicals at all. Entire cities drank safely from slow sand filters for generations before chlorine was ever invented. The living skin on the sand did the work. London itself was cleaned this way, and an Amish grandfather explained it to me, crouched in the rain, in a single sentence, exactly the way his grandfather explained it to him. And then Gideon told me about his own test, the thing that made me set down my cup. Years ago, he said, he had a new filter bed, fresh, clean sand, and the water came through clear but never quite right, never quite sweet. His father told him to be patient and stop scrubbing the top of the sand clean. So he left it. He stopped disturbing the top layer. And within a few weeks, as the living skin formed, the water changed. It came through sweet and clean and alive, the same sand, the same water. The only difference was that he stopped killing the living layer that did the real work. We just stopped poisoning it and started protecting it. The cleaning was never something he did to the water. It was something the living earth did, if he only let it. That is the part the modern world forgot or chose to bury. The city pours in chemicals to kill everything, the bad and the good alike, and then must keep pouring them in forever and bills you forever, because dead water cannot keep itself clean. The old way grows a living filter that cleans the water for free, as long as it lives. One way you rent, the other way you tend, and tending costs nothing but patience. Now step back with me, because this was never really only about a well. When you pour that glass of tap water and catch that chemical smell, and you pay your $70 a month, you are paying for something deeper than water. You are paying for the day they convinced us that the earth beneath our feet, which had given our families sweet water for thousands of years, could no longer be trusted. You are paying for a kind of forgetting. They took something every household knew, and they made us believe we were helpless without them. Something was taken from us. The simple, steadying knowledge that the ground gives clean water freely, and that we are not too foolish to keep it clean ourselves. And the thing that gave me hope, driving home through that gray drizzle, is that it is not lost. Gideon Fisher still has it. His grandchildren, drawing the same sweet water, still have it. And you have it now. The moment you understand that water does not need to be made clean, it needs to be left clean. So, let me ask you something, and I do read these. In the comments below, tell me one thing. Where does your water actually come from, and do you trust it? City pipe? Private well? A spring? A bottle from the store? Tell me. I think when we see all our answers together, we are going to realize how few of us even know the answer to that simple question anymore, and how strange that is. And if something in this stirred you, if you felt that pull toward water you could trust because you understood it, then subscribe and join us. This is not a place for smashing buttons. It is a gathering of self-reliant people who would rather protect what is clean than buy it back. You belong here, if you want to. In the next video, I am going to show you something that sounds impossible until you see it. How a simple $5 clay pot keeps food cold for weeks, with no electricity at all, the original Amish refrigerator that the big appliance companies quietly buried. If you think the living filter was clever, wait until you see what they do with 2 pots and a handful of sand. But before you go, stay with me one more minute. Because after I first told this story, the letters poured in, and a few of them I have to read to you. The first came from a man named Jacob in Mount Hope, Ohio, who had an old hand-dug well on his property that he had always assumed was useless. After watching, he cleaned it, covered it properly, and built a slow sand filter exactly as I described, and had his water tested before and after. He wrote, "The change was night and day, and the lab confirmed it. I had clean, sweet water under my own feet the whole time, and I almost capped it off out of ignorance. I will never trust a chemical smell over my own ground again. Under his own feet the whole time, Jacob. That is the tragedy and the hope in one sentence." There was a third letter that stayed with me. It came from a family in Bandera, Texas, written by a father named Samuel in dry country where water is precious and the bills are high. He wrote that they had installed a slow sand filter for their stored rainwater after watching, and for the first time the water kept sweet through the long, hot months instead of going stale and green. He wrote, "Out here, we learn fast that water is life. You showed us how to keep it alive instead of just treating it dead. My children help me tend the filter now. They understand something about water that most people in the city will never learn. Tending instead of treating. That family understood the whole lesson." The second came from a woman named Linda in Asheville, North Carolina, a retired biology teacher. She wrote that she had taught about slow sand filtration for years as a historical curiosity, never imagining it was still in living use. After watching, she built one at home and watched the living layer form on the sand with her own eyes over a few weeks. She wrote, "I taught it as the past. Gideon lives it as the present. The living filter is real, it is beautiful, and we abandoned it for chemicals we now cannot stop using. That is not progress. That is forgetting. From a woman who taught the science, that is worth holding on to." Now let me answer the doubts, because I know you have them. I had them too. You are thinking, is this actually safe to drink? And I want to be completely honest with you. Clarifying and freshening water is one thing. Guaranteeing it is safe to drink is another, and it depends entirely on your source, your land, and your situation. The old families knew their wells across generations. They knew their water. If you are working with any source, test it and consult a qualified professional before you trust it for drinking. I am giving you history and principle, the why behind what worked for centuries, not a promise about your particular glass. Respect water. It deserves it. You are thinking, surely the city water is safer than some old well. And sometimes, for some people in some places, that is true, and I will not pretend otherwise. Crowded places genuinely need central systems. But notice what the fear did. It did not just tell city dwellers to use city water. It told every single one of us, even those on good land with good ground, that we were helpless to keep our own water clean. That part was never true. That part was sold to us. You are thinking, why would they hide something so simple? But now you understand. You cannot meter a living filter. You cannot bill a man monthly for charcoal and sand he gathers himself. The chemical system must be fed forever, and so it pays forever. The living system tends itself for free. One of those makes money. Guess which one we were taught to trust? And you are thinking, this all sounds too old-fashioned to matter now. But the slow sand filter is not a relic. It is still used to clean drinking water for millions of people around the world, today, right now, precisely because it works so well and costs so little. The only people who forgot it are the ones who were sold something they have to keep paying for. Old is not the same as obsolete. Sometimes old is just true. And you are thinking, I live in an apartment in the city. None of this applies to me, but it applies more than you know. Even if you never dig a well, understanding where clean water comes from changes how you see that glass on your counter. You begin to ask better questions. You store water more wisely. You stop assuming that the pipe in the wall is the only thing standing between you and going thirsty. And if the day ever comes when that pipe fails, in a storm, in an emergency, in a hard season, you will be one of the few who knows that the earth and a barrel of sand can give you clean water when the system cannot. That knowledge weighs nothing and costs nothing, and one day it may be worth everything. Carry it. So go find a clean barrel, layer in the gravel, the sand, the charcoal, the way the earth is built, pour slow, be patient. And watch water come clean the way it has come clean for all of human history, by being left alone to do what it was always able to do. And remember what Gideon Fisher told me 3 times, by the stone well in the soft gray rain. Water does not need to be made clean. It needs to be left clean. We just stopped poisoning it and started protecting it. Protect yours.